always ask as a kickoff, for you, how did you get started in business? It's going to take you way back.
Oh God, into the Wayback Machine. So I was married, newly married, unemployed, and somebody mentioned to me that they could get me an interview at Prudential Insurance Company corporate headquarters in Newark, New Jersey. I couldn't imagine a more alien territory for me to occupy than this 100-year-old insurance company. But I needed a job badly, so I went for the interview. The interview was for a corporate purchasing agent. Prudential in those years bought everything and stocked it, inventoried it in warehouses around the country. They were the largest buyer of paper in the country other than the US government.
Wow.
They bought huge quantities of everything. So I went for the interview. I will not mention the name of the man who is dead now, who was the director of purchasing. But at the final interview, which was the third, he said, "I've had my trouble with Jews before. Why should I hire you?" That's a direct quote, not a paraphrase. I was a kid. I don't know how I had the courage to say this. I swear I don't know where it came from. But I said, "I've had my trouble with wasps before. Why should I work for you?" He said, "You're hired."
That's awesome.
He then offered me $12,800 a year, which
whopping salary.
I said, "Not enough," got up and left.
Wow. Wow.
Floyd.
What a poker player.
Called me back the next day and said, "Look, I'm pushing it. I'll raise it $400 to $13,200 a year." I didn't want to overplay my hand, so I took it.
There you go.
My assumption was that I would, in a purchasing area, I'd get to meet entrepreneurs who own businesses, and in a few years, I would end up out of there. It was never my intention to make a career there, ever. I was in charge of buying office supplies, airplanes, and cars.
Wow.
I knew equally little about any of them. I knew a little about cars. But
yeah, I was going to say, what about the cars? You had to know something about the cars.
So
later.
What I did is I created open seeing hours every Thursday morning that I would see any vendor without an appointment. Because the only way I could learn was by picking vendors' brains. And it was a first come, first served situation. And one morning, 1 year into the journey, a young man walked in who owned an office supply company, a commercial office supply company in New York City. And we spent an hour together. And at the end of the meeting, he said, "You and I are going to become partners." And then he left. He said, "There's just something there. We're going to end up in business together." I said, "Yeah, that's the most creative line I've ever heard from somebody trying to sell me something." So I kind of just tucked it away. But the relationship blossomed. We did some business together. And one day he called and said, "Okay, I'm ready, but there are a few things you have to know. My company in New York is technically bankrupt, but I think that you and I can put it together and make it happen." It was technically bankrupt. We had a little retail store. We're on 26th Street off of 6th Avenue, and the ground floor was a little retail store. The retail store was rejects from stuff we had sent to customers in their return that were not totally resaleable. And quite honestly, my partner and I, because we couldn't afford to pay ourselves, lived out of the cash from the till in the little retail store.
Well, coming from $13,200, it shouldn't have been that hard to adjust to zero.
What wasn't much of a takeaway. So we started to develop this business, and it was kind of fun. We didn't know what we were doing, and we learned by doing, and we had nothing to lose, so we had nothing to risk.
Yeah.
And we started to grow. We were both fairly intelligent, and we worried about things like how we bought and our word with vendors, and our word with customers. We started to grow. And early 70s, there was a recession. There were 800 commercial stationers on the island of Manhattan at that point.
Wow.
Everybody had an amazing dominance over a 2-block radius of their location. There was a recession in the 70s, and some of them that were not well run started to go Chapter 11. And my partner actually came up with the idea that we would go to the courts, buy their inventory for 10 cents on the dollar, which was pretty much the going rate, and then make a deal with the principals of those companies to become salespeople with us.
Wow.
And since they were basically salespeople who were crummy at running businesses, it worked for them and it worked for us. We gave them discipline. We gave them an income. They did what they liked to do, which was sell. They were independent contractors. And suddenly we were off to the races. We started growing like crazy. Fast forward 1986, we get a call from a big consulting firm. Our CFO, our chief accounting officer, gets a call from a major consulting firm saying, there's a public company in Holland that wants to buy you. Chief financial officers, if they're any good, realize they'll be the first ones fired if that happens. So he hung up. Next, that consulting guy called me. It was a Friday. I will never forget. And I said, well, if you're serious, my partner and I will be in the office tomorrow morning, Saturday morning at 8 a.m. You be here and we'll talk to you. Bye.
Wow.
Once again, it's got to be the 12,813-2 courage. I don't know where that came from either. But I didn't have time to mess around with garbage. So he showed up on Saturday morning, and he said that they'd been retained by a $6 billion revenue. Now, this is the 80s. That was a lot of money then. Global firm in Amsterdam that had nothing in America and nothing in office supplies. And they had contracted this consulting firm to first pick an industry and second pick likely targets. The industry the Dutch agreed on was office supplies because it was in those years relatively stable. It grew at GDP plus 1 or 2 points. There was little downside risk. There was no product change. The products you sold today were the same products you sold a year from now. The glorious past. So we started negotiating with them. And in September of 1987, my partner and I gave them a ridiculous price. September of 1987, they paid it and bought 70% of our company. We retained 30% ownership. September of 87 is important before your time, but in October of 87 was the first major market meltdown since the Great Depression.
Wow.
Since I had been poor, I did not put 1 penny of the money I had gotten from selling the 70% into the stock market. My financial advisor said, "You're crazy. It's the strongest stock market ever." I've said I've been poor, and I'm not exactly poor now. I know the difference, and I don't want to go back there.
So I'm going to put it all under my mattress.
So no, there were tax-free municipals that were a great vehicle in those years. And I put none of it into the market, so I survived that rather well. We grew that company. We bought 39 companies in the US and in London for the Dutch group that was called BT.
Okay.
I spent 7 years with the Dutch. The Dutch senior leadership left and became awful people. The new people who came in were just, they had no soul and no EQ, and I couldn't deal with it. Just destroyed me. And I was the guy, going back to how screwed up I was. I was in the office in Manhattan at between 5 and 5:30 every morning.
Wow.
My rule was I wasn't going to get up to see my kids for breakfast anyway. I might as well go in the middle of the night, but I had to be home for dinner every day.
Okay.
My kids still mention that we, unlike anybody they knew, we had dinner together every night.
That's awesome.
But a pattern that I've been thinking a lot about what your questions might be, but I think we were all done a misservice by parents, teachers, and coaches back in my day. And it's our fault, but their fault. They kind of were unindicted co-conspirators. They all said, work harder and you'll do better. We misinterpreted that. They didn't say work longer and you'll do better.
Yeah, that's true.
They
Good point.
said work harder.
Yeah.
Our feeble brains totally, at least in my generation, we totally screwed that up, and harder got synonymous with longer. And we worked every hour that God gave.
Yeah.
And sacrificed too much by doing that, of our families, of our personal health, for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to my story. So I quit the Dutch after 7 years in October of 1994, and thought I would take a year off to decide what I wanted to do when I grow up.
Wow. Did you still have your 30% ownership stake at that point?
No, that's an interesting story. The deal was that they wanted us to acquire other companies and create a sizable organization in the office products industry, a nationwide at a minimum. And they had to loan us the money to maintain our 30% equity throughout. One of my customers in our little New York office products company was a major investment bank, Rothschild. Rothschild called me up that they were representing a fabulously wealthy investor from Pittsburgh called Henry Hillman. It was called the Hillman Group. And Henry Hillman had acquired 4 major office products companies. Washington, D.C., huge, probably the biggest in America at that point, a company called Ginn, the biggest in Chicago, one in St. Louis, and one in, I can't remember the 4th city, but there were 4. And they were for sale, and Rothschild wanted to know, before they put the book out to the investment community, could the Dutch have some interest? My partner and I flew over to Amsterdam immediately, all excited. This would immediately put us on the map, immediately. And the Dutch kind of gave us a tepid response, and we just couldn't understand it. So one of the Dutch pulled us aside and said, "You guys do not understand the Dutch temperament at all. They wrote a deal where they have to loan you the money to maintain 30% ownership. And now they're going to have to loan you $100 million or more to maintain your ownership in this deal. And they don't know how to deal with it." My partner and I said, "That's ridiculous." The contract was that the 30% we owned had a floor value, which was the same multiple that we had sold our original 70% for. It could never go below that floor value. However, we could put it at the end of 5 years, and the multiplier that was used at the beginning for the 70%, which is X times profits, would be applied towards the profits of any 3 years of those 5 we wanted. So we had tremendous upside on the 30%. So we said to them, "We'll give you the 30% today for the floor value and sell you our shares.
Wow.
You just give us the appreciation value as if we had never sold it over the 5 years. You don't have to loan us any money. This is too good an opportunity to miss." Suddenly, the Dutch were our best friends in the world. All was smiling. "Let's go out to dinner." And we made the deal, and suddenly we were something. So when I left, I was a 0% owner, and it was after 7 years, as I said, and the deal triggered in 5 years. So I had all my money out already. And the Dutch had owned nothing in America and made a terrible mistake, thank God. And my original contract was 7 years, but they never renewed it after 7 or worried about renewing it. And that abrogated any non-compete I had. So I was free to go where I wanted to go.
Yeah, which is cool. Now you get to test the market.
In retrospect, I'll take good luck over good planning any day.
Oh yeah. Well, we all know that plans, as much as we have them, they don't always work out to the way we want.
Got to be ready to pivot, man. Got to be ready to pivot. Mobile, agile, and hostile.
Oh yeah, great line.
So I retired, basically, in 1987 at the ripe old age of 40.
Wow, you're going to make some people jealous with that one.
Yeah, no, it only lasted 90 days.
Okay, all right.
My wife was scared silly that it would last longer. And the thing I didn't count on, and this isn't hubris, the phone started ringing. And one of the calls was a senior executive at Staples who I never knew. And he said to me that We're opening a new store every 72 hours. But we are going to run out of corners soon. And we have to get into the commercial delivery space, the businesses. Otherwise, we're going to be yesterday's news once we run out of places to open retail stores. And some manufacturers suggested that you would be a good guy to do that for us. So we spent the next 60 days negotiating a deal. And I joined Staples. I must recount, I'm sorry, my first day at Staples, they brought me to the executive leadership meeting. It was 15 guys. It was called the Point Team. I'm this New Yorker. I'm in a custom-made suit from Bergdorf Goodman and a very expensive tie. And their CEO and founder was a guy named Tom Stenberg, who was an amazing, amazing individual, but he was a slob. He looked like he had slept in his clothes for 6 months whenever you saw him. And I go to the meeting dressed like this New Yorker. And he comes in and excuses himself, comes back with a scissor and says, I'm sorry, I guess nobody explained me to you. If you ever come in dressed like that again, I will personally cut off your tie.
Wow, that's funny, man.
Now, again, it gets funnier. Now, after the meeting, I'm scheduled to go see all of the other participants, the CFO, the chief merchant, one by one. First stop is the CFO. He happens to be a fellow who is now under indictment in the USC case. He spent $2 million to get his kids in.
Whatever it takes kind of guy.
Not a good guy. Not a good guy. They come to his office. He's a CFO. He says, close the door. I said, okay, now this is my first hour at Staples. He says, I just want you to know I'm not the bastard they all say I am. I said, oh, okay, thank you.
Wow, little therapy session on day one.
Now I go to the next office, chief merchant. Sit down. He says, I don't know why the hell they sent you to see me. I'm working my 2 weeks. They fired me. I ran out of paper. Wow. It's an allocation market for paper. And I was a spot buyer in an allocation market. And you may not understand those terms, but that means you're not getting any. And we're out of paper in the stores, and they fired me. As a matter of fact, they're hoping that you could find them paper.
Wow. I
excuse myself and go out. In those days, I smoked 60 Marlboros a day.
Wow.
Reds. Went out to light a cigarette, called my wife and said, I think I made a terrible mistake. They're all whack job. Is cursing all right on this? Is cursing all right on this venue?
Yeah, why not? It's got to be real.
I said, they're all fucking crazy here. I think I just made a terrible mistake.
Coming from a guy that was in the office at 5:30 in the morning.
These guys were
60 Marlboro Reds a day.
Somebody wants to cut off my tie. Somebody who I don't even know tells me he's not a bastard. And the third guy just got fired. What have I done? I almost started to dial the Dutch and say, take me back, please. Anyway, I survived that and quickly realized that they would not accept the status quo of the business. And to be successful, I had to reinvent. My options were do business the way it had always been done in the space, and they wouldn't be happy and they'd get rid of me. Reinvent, I had a chance at success and they'd keep me. I had a chance at failure and they wouldn't. But the only chance of success was to do it totally different.
Yeah.
So I threw away the book and I did it totally different. And luck of all lucks, it worked. And our value proposition as we started getting people together is we're going to become the best commercial office products company in the world. We don't know how, but we'll figure it out.
That's our mission.
And that's our mission.
Yeah.
We decided that we would try anything, fail fast, no penalty for being wrong, penalty for not saying I was wrong. Fail fast, throw it out, and start again. And we had something that no commercial office product company ever had before. We had brand equity. When we called, the one thing we knew, when we called the customer and said, we're from Staples, we'd like to talk to you about your office supply needs, 40% of the time we got an appointment.
Yeah,
that is unheard of in cold calling. Unheard of. but 40% of the time we got in the door, which was just remarkable. Then we had to figure out what we were going to say when we got in the door, but details.
Get to that later.
And I took the same approach with vendors. I knew all the vendors from my prior existence at BT. And I called up and I said, look, we're going to become your biggest customer. We're nothing now. I want the same deal I had at BT. The funniest one was a big vendor who said, look, I've been negotiating with somebody at Staples for 2 years. You had a 16-point deal, 16% discount for me at BT. Staples has been negotiating with me for a 3-point discount, and I haven't agreed to it yet. If you come in the door and I give you the same 16, they're going to burn my ass. The whole infrastructure that's been negotiating me is going to find a way to shoot me, not even a maybe. I said, okay, let me work at the infrastructure, but here's the deal. If I could get the people who are the blockers out of the way, I want 17, not 16.
Wow.
He said, deal.
Wow. There you go.
So a year later, we acquired a company in Europe, and we needed to create a purchasing infrastructure in Europe. And I recommended that they sent the 2 people who had been negotiating with this company for 2 years to go build out Europe.
There you go. There you go. Victory. That's awesome.
So we grew the company amazingly. By the way, I do have to back up because one of the strange inflection points about my realization that longer isn't better was that even though I went in the office at 5:30, I had a big sectional sofa in my office in New York, and I was in conference from 2 to 3 every afternoon with no exceptions.
In conference with the sofa. I love it.
In conference with the sofa, but I mean serious.
Well, you had to be ready for dinner. You had to be excited.
Pants off, shoes off, serious. Locked doors, sacrosanct, no way. Now, nobody really minded because they knew they could get me at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. They didn't mind not calling me from 2 to 3. So there was something percolating there about balance. You need rest.
Yeah.
To do your best. Your best isn't your longest. Your hardest isn't your longest. And the work-life balance thing, which came to roost fully when my younger daughter was about 14, and I was traveling too much.
Yeah, you told me some crazy amount of miles or some crazy amount of days on the road.
Yeah, but I was platinum. I'm lifetime platinum with American because I did 5 million miles with American. But At that time, I was platinum with American, gold with Continental, and gold with Delta, and did day trips on Concorde to England. Left at 2 o'clock one day, worked the full day, and came home at 5 o'clock the next day. But when I came home, there was a re-entry into the house, and my re-entry often dealt with me recounting the things that weren't done the way I did them when I was home. And my 14-year-old daughter, on one of my reinsertions at dinner, said, "Dad, you're not here enough to have an opinion about how we do those things."
Wow. Telling you how to, yeah, all right.
She was right. She was right.
Wow.
The trip you remember is in 2008, I bought a hostile takeover of a major competitor, which was actually the Dutch company that I bought back. Hostile takeover succeeded in the acquisition. They had changed their name to Corporate Express. And the day after we succeeded, I took Staples corporate plane and went from Boston to Newark. This was a 4-day trip. Boston to Newark, Newark to Chicago, Chicago to Houston, Houston to Los Angeles, Los Angeles to San Francisco, and met 2,000 employees of Corporate Express because this was hostile. They didn't know who the heck we were. And I had to put a face on who we were quickly, so they didn't scatter. That was a little bit intense. 4 days, all those trips, is a little intense.
Yeah, but it sounds like you were primed for that. You were sort of trained for that based on what you were doing at the time.
Not only that, but 2008, we're already getting towards the end of my career. I know that this is, we just acquired this $4 billion revenue competitor. My final job, I worked 4 years past that date, was to put the pieces together and make them work. And it did. It worked brilliantly, and was the biggest smash in Staples history. And really, all the people who would work for me in that little crummy company on 26th Street off 6th Avenue ended up working for me again. My administrative assistant had stayed there. She worked for me. My sales assistant became a salesperson, stayed there. It was karma. It was absolute karma. It was, completion of the circle of my business career. It was just amazing. So I left there in 2012. And the question became, what are you going to do now? By the way, at some point during that 60 cigarette a day journey, I weighed 270 pounds.
Wow.
I had been a high school and college football player. I had been a nothing player for all the years that I worked, other than work. And I suddenly realized that this was untenable, and I had to figure something out. I had to change something. Yeah. I had to add something to my lifestyle that made everything else better. It kind of hit me on my 65th birthday, funnily enough. My elder daughter, who's now 42, gave me a gift certificate of going to Soul Cycle with her in New York.
What a gift.
I had never, ever been a team gym person, but something about spinning just got me. Just the endorphins, the sweat, the atmosphere. I didn't like Soul Cycle. As you know, I ended up at Flywheel.
Yeah.
But there was something about the collaborative setting, the atmosphere, as you found out later when we first met.
Yeah,
we're going
to get to that. But I guess too, it was probably a pretty positive environment, upbeat, positive, and different.
Yeah, and nobody, the obstacle you build for yourself is people are going to look at me funny. People are going to think I can't do it. And that's bullshit. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody cares about what you're doing. They're worried about what they're doing. And the decent people there, and most of them want to see you succeed and want to see you really do well. Yeah. They're competitive, as you know. I want to beat the hell out of you.
Yeah.
But they're not competitive in an evil way, that they're not willing to celebrate your successes. They are.
Right.
So there was something about that just hit me across the face.
Which I guess you could say right there is often different than most corporate settings, because how many people that you're working next to are actually rooting for you? In a lot of settings, there's a lot of negative culture.
Yes, there is, and there's a lot of jealousy, the delivery business at Staples, they were all hardcore retailers. There were plenty of people who didn't want to give us the time of day, and who didn't care about us and didn't want to give us any. In 1999, I asked for $2 million to build a website and said, we've got to get into the online business. And the CEO started laughing at me. He said, who's going to give you a business $2 million? Don't be ridiculous. We spent $50,000 and hired 2 college kids at MIT in their garage to make us a laptop demonstration site that could not do business. It couldn't do commerce, but we could go to customers, because customers weren't ready to use it. They wanted to know that the vendor was ready to use it.
You were prepared.
They wanted to know that you were prepared. They weren't prepared. But we could take this and say, look at the internet site we created.
Yeah.
When you're ready, we're ready. It worked.
Yeah. A little bit of trick photography.
They bought it.
That's awesome.
So I remember the first board meeting I went to. I just remember this a week or so ago, the first board meeting I went to, and you kind of grow up thinking that corporate directors of $20 billion revenue companies are supermen. Senator George Murphy was on the board. Meg Whitman was on the board, who at that point was chairman of eBay and later became chairman of HP. What's his name? The owner of the Falcons, founder of Home Depot, Art.
Not
Art
many.
Blank. Art Blank.
Okay.
Art Blank was on the board. So at a board meeting, I was the presenter. They rotated which business presented, and Art Blank was giving me a really hard time during the presentation, and I didn't know him very well. And at the break, when we went out for coffee, I went over to the coffee. He was sitting there with Senator Murphy, and he said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Well, at times like this, I always remember something my father said that I would never be impertinent enough to say to you guys. But my father always said, do you know why there are two sides to my ass?" And Art said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I wouldn't want you to kiss the same side that everybody else does." Luckily, he cracked up. We became fairly friendly. But Art's way of testing your commitment was to push at you hard. It didn't mean he didn't believe it. He meant he wanted to make sure that you believed it. That you weren't just mouthing words, that you had thought it through clearly and completely and had enough of the answers to proceed. He's a great guy. He still is a great guy, an amazing guy. He is one of those dapper guys who, when he wakes up in the morning, looks like he just stepped off the front cover of GQ.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he always looks pressed and ready to go. Something I cannot do.
Except for that time when you went in the full suit.
Yeah,
for the meeting at
first day at Staples. That never happened. I have since thrown away all of those because they were for 270-pounders. None of them fit anymore.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. Throwing away your fat clothes is an important departure in accepting that you're really changing.
Yeah.
Keeping them as a backup and as a safety valve is the worst thing you can do. The worst.
Well, you know what I think too, for you, it's like, as you explain your story, there's been a lot of change. And I think so many people are resistant to change. And you're saying, hey, my whole journey's been about change and challenging yourself.
Change is the constant variable. I guess after a year at Staples, when things started to feel good, I have an older brother who I'm very friendly with. He lives in Santa Monica. We were talking, and I said, "I'm so lucky." He said, "Why are you lucky?" I said, "I'm so lucky I found Staples." He said, "You're an asshole." I said, "Maybe, but how come this time?" He said, "Most of the people in the world suffer in jobs that they hate and can't stand because they're risk averse and can't deal with change. You're not lucky. You made a change."
Yeah, that's true.
There's no luck involved there. That took courage. You made a change. So I see change as a vehicle to refresh you and to reinforce those things you thought about yourself that may have gotten buried in the blur of day-to-day combat.
Yeah, I love that.
And to reinforce who you are and what you are to yourself. I've discussed this with you before, but I'm patterned by the fact that by two things. One is that I believe in constructive negativity, that nothing good happens from saying good things to people. All improvement in life, in business, in marriage happens because somebody has the skill and the confidence to discuss how you're failing, what you're doing wrong, what you have to do differently, what you have to do better. By the way, we're already way past the 35-minute mark.
No, it's okay. I'm actually taking a note on constructive negativity because I like that concept, and I know that you've put it into practicality. But today in a lot of corporate settings, it's all about positivity and almost this false optimism. And leaders today think that that's how they have to lead, and it creates this disingenuous culture.
It really harkens back to an HR principle when I was first starting in business called the Hertzberger motivator theory, believe it or not. And the theory was you have to say nice things to people so their receptors open up and they can hear, because otherwise they're closed and they're not listening. The problem is that management got as far as say nice things and never developed this, and it takes a skill to deliver bad news.
So what is it? How do you do it?
Okay, immediacy. It's got to be close to the event that you viewed as negative. Over time, it gets blurry, and it gives the person you're trying to work with the option to say, oh, that's not exactly how it was. You didn't really understand what I was saying. When it's as near to the event as possible, there's no possibility of blur. This is what you said.
Yeah, which is great, because how many leaders today, something happens and they sort of turn to it and say, okay, if it happens again, or I'll get to it later, or I'll reference that event if something else happens, or in the future. You're saying, no, you got to go after it.
Immediacy. And immediacy gives another aspect to it that's even more important. It says to that person, I care about you doing well. I think enough about you that I'm taking the time right now to let you know where you're missing the boat so that you can improve it and do better. I'm invested in you.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this to dig you. I'm doing this to lift you, because I can't do well unless you do well.
Now, like, are you actually like saying those things to the person, or are you correcting
That's their takeaway.
Okay.
Invariably, if anybody is worth the intervention, that's what they take away. Wow, that guy really listened to me, cared about what I said, evaluated what I said, and wants me to do it better next time. That's the only, unless you're an idiot, that's the only takeaway. Seriously, what other takeaway can you have from that? When somebody, a boss, somebody, or a contemporary cares enough to talk to you about it?
Well, you know what? There's a lot of, leaders, C-suiters today that say, hey, you know what? These millennials are so tough. If I got on them like that, they would shut down on me. So,
I don't believe that's one of the things they're tough about. I think they're tough about balance, and they're right. I think they're better than we are when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my children, when she got married, said to me, Dad, the 14-year-old, said, I appreciate how much you sacrificed for us, how hard you worked to give us good things in our lives. But it's important that you know that my husband and I are not built that way. We're not willing to work as hard as you did. And we realize that means we may have less material things. But I want you to know two things. It's not because I don't love and respect everything you did for me. And the second thing is, it's not your job to equalize. You're not supposed to make up the gap. So I guess we did something right with that kid.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But I think that millennials, to a certain extent, have it right. They don't want to sacrifice what's important. They want to work smarter, not harder, which is something that had I done earlier in life, I would have avoided a lot of the physical infirmities that attacked me later on. Yeah. Luckily, I managed to get through all of them, but there's no question I did myself physical damage by not discovering how important treating my body was in addition to treating my brain.
Yeah. People today, they're on all the time, because again, it's sort of that lesson that you said, how you were raised back in the days, like how it became not just about hard work, it became hard and long. Now today, I think people are trying to navigate away from that, because I think fundamentally they know that it's wrong, but they also struggle with balancing how much is enough in order for me to hit my goals.
I was dogged in my Staples career. I had more female direct reports than anybody. I thought that females, this is a terrible thing to say, I apologize in advance, were not duplicitous, had no secret agendas, were smart as hell, worked harder than anybody, because to get there, they had to work harder than anybody. And I absolutely found them to be great direct reports. Great. Not that I didn't have great males, I did, but I had more females as direct reports than males. And I was not a nice guy in terms of them missing family stuff. I wouldn't talk to them at home at night, and they knew it.
Yeah.
I insisted they made every recital, soccer match. I would follow up on their kids' sports activities, so I knew which one of them I had to bug about being there. How did Danny do in the match yesterday? I was not. I also, by the way, Staples, as you know, you'll appreciate this, is headquartered in Boston, and I was born in the shadow of Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
And my office was, let me see if I can find some memorabilia. Ah, yes. My office was a Yankee shrine.
In the middle of Boston.
Including this, which is Bucky effing Dent hitting the winning homer.
There it
signed
is.
by him and Torres.
Wow, that's cool.
And I had my staff meetings were Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. in my office, and there were chairs, and there was one big captain's chair, a high back chair with the Yankee logo on the head. That was not my seat, but it was over there. The last person who entered the room knew, because nobody else in Boston would get in that seat, that they were stuck sitting in the Yankee chair.
Wow.
So everybody was on time for my meetings.
So it's a nice, fun way to have a little bit of banter.
And during the season, my game day started with the box scores from the night before of the Red Sox and the Yankees, and the American League East standings, about how everybody stood.
Yeah, Jay, when we went to a game together a couple of weeks ago, you were telling me, and I forgot what you called it, but there was I think you were saying how you were able to either call somebody out, like you'd go around and ask people different questions. You remember this?
I don't.
There was, you were explaining a management style to me where it was like a way of engaging each person. You know what? I'll have to think about it. I'll come back to you on that. But you were sort of just talking about, like you do, leadership and management. And I thought it was pretty cool how you mentioned it. But I got to think of your exact context, and then
okay,
I'll bring it back. But I think a lot of people running companies today. Again, when I talk to a lot of CEOs, they're a little bit confused today as to how they should approach their people. You know, if they go too light on them, they feel like they won't get enough out of them. If they go too hard on them, they're afraid people will quit. And then they lead in this sort of non-committal leadership style.
Leaders, I think, have to show their humanity. I think if they lose their humanity and their vulnerability, you can't be afraid to show your vulnerability. I'm a human being. I hurt, I celebrate, I cry, I smile, I laugh. Everybody on my team knew that making fun of me was expected and graded. I don't think this may have been the one I told you, but on the Staples performance appraisal, I made an addendum. And every one of my direct reports had to rate me and give me some areas of improvement. What I was talking, now I remember what I was talking about, the truth session.
Yeah, truth session, yeah.
That was at my original company. The first time we got big enough, we had a management conference, and I don't know how I dreamed this up, but we had a truth session. We all sat in a room. One person was in the box. We went around the room, and everybody had to mention the two things that you annoyed them the most about, how you annoyed them. You were not allowed to respond. This was not defense. This was your taking in what was said. And it was supposed to be a 2-hour session, it ended up to be a 6-hour session. We had to bring dinner in. People were crying, people were hugging. And it was remarkable because when somebody said something that rang true, you could see everybody else in the room going, yeah, right. And my two biggies, which I'm sure I told you, one was the word next. I was very much committed to seeing anybody who needed to see me. But going back to my Prudential days, if anybody had a problem, knock on my door. I'll get into it. And I used the word next as dismissive. And they all said that when I said next, it was a knife in their hearts. Even though I saw everybody and got involved, when I said next, it was like a dagger. It was like, so I have never used that word in business again. The other was from everybody in the room, that because I saw everybody and they knew I had a passion for action, they knew that if they came to me with a problem and I deemed it worthy, I would prioritize it above everything else and just spring into action and totally go around my managers, not go to them, go to the involved party, prioritize this, get it moving, when maybe it was the second or third most important thing. And my manager said, "You're not letting us manage. If you want to manage everything, go right ahead.
Yeah.
But you're destroying our ability to manage." And that really, really hit me. And I realized that empowering the people who work for you, trusting them, understanding that there's more than one right way, and their way might be righter than mine.
Yeah.
And not to intervene unless they're about to drive off a cliff is the only way you can really have a collaborative team that does something.
Yeah. And with that, if you didn't have the truth session, how would you find that out?
I wouldn't.
Yeah, because you can't take a test and that pops out. You know, doesn't work like that. Oh, I took a DISC assessment or I took this. You know, that is like direct feedback from the people you manage and lead.
I'll give you the anti to that from a later CEO at Staples who had some EQ problems, and the board insisted that he do a 360. And there were 17 of us below him, reports, who did a 360. And then he decided to have a conference in the boardroom with all of the 17 and went down every one of the points and started to refute them. And he got to one that somebody commented that he walked out of a meeting 4 times.
Wow.
And he said, "I want you to know," he took up his pad and he said, "I want you to know that at Friday's staff meeting, Baitler walked out 6 times. So I raised my hand and he said, "What?" I said, "There's only one problem, Ron. Nobody gives a shit when I leave the meeting. They care when you do."
That's true. That's true.
So that was kind of the anti to the truth session.
Got it. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You're somewhat of an innovator because this is a lot of the things that are being sort of talked about now and discussed. Like, how can we get our team to collaborate more? How can we get more engagement? How can we create more of a, you know, vulnerable yet supportive culture, but also still have the edge of a winning team?
You know, as you know better than me, winners look different, sound different, hold themselves differently, and winning feeds on winning.
Yeah.
And I am convinced that part of it for me was something I said to you earlier about fail fast and no victims for failure.
Yeah.
Letting people understand that it was okay to fail, but it was not okay to sit on your hands and never raise your hand.
Yeah.
Understanding that they were not going to get fired if we did something wrong. That I was there to take the knife in the back from external, which I always said my job is to take the arrows in the back, and I want you to know that scar tissue has no pain sensor, so don't worry about it.
No, that's powerful. I mean, I again, just working even in sports with some great managers, they would want you to do your job to the best of your ability, knowing that some negative things may happen, but if you're giving your best, they'll stand up for you when the front office or the, you know, shareholders, if you will, attack.
That is the most powerful weapon in building a team discipline that there can possibly be. In business, in sports, you know, but in business, there's nothing more powerful than that. The idea that I work for somebody who has my best interests, constructive negativity, has my best interests at heart, and that who will stand up for me, who will not throw me under the bus, who accepts fault. And my greatest joy was for somebody to heap praise on somebody on my team, not on me.
Yeah.
I believed, and I was the only one at Staples, unfortunately, who did this, that part of my responsibility was to train my successor. That I had to have somebody ready, willing, and able to take over my seat when I decided I had enough.
Yeah.
And I did. And that takes a certain degree of confidence in who and what you are, and the ability to put your own goals and desires on hold.
Yeah, which is huge.
The other part, and I have to get into this, and I know we're already at almost an hour, but I took
okay. It's all going to be recorded. We're going to cut this up nice.
You could edit it into sections. That's fine. The other key thing for me was something called imposter syndrome. And it is a known psychological problem, usually by highly successful type A's, who believe that everything is a charade. They fooled everybody. And every day they come home and look in the mirror and say, oh, I fooled them again.
Exhausting.
Exhausting and scary. And they don't really value themselves. And one of the biggies was getting to a point where I looked in the mirror and the guy looking back was not a bad guy. He cared about people. He didn't hurt people knowingly. He tried to do better for his family, for his friends, for his coworkers. And, you know, it just was so liberating. It relieved this 1,000-pound weight on my back that tomorrow I was going to get discovered to be a fraud.
Yeah.
And it was just, and the more I talk to successful people about that, they say to me, oh yeah, I can recognize that. I understand that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm, you know, when I coach these individuals, it's the same thing. We talk through it and we work through it. But, you know, for you, it sounds like a lot of your career, you weren't looking for really the external validation as much. And I think that causes the imposter syndrome to flare up even more when you're waiting for others to validate you.
I guess so. I had that older brother was very, very successful, very, very smart, got 4 800s on his college boards.
Wow.
And we shared a bedroom growing up, and he was an abusive son of a bitch who lorded over me, even though he was about 4 inches and 50 pounds lighter than me. He was my big brother.
Yeah.
And that didn't get broken until I was 16. He was 20. He broke up with his girlfriend. There was one area of our bedroom that was all my newspaper clippings for football. And he came home angry because he'd broken up with his girlfriend, ripped all my clippings off the wall and said, what the hell is this here? It was 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. I was pissed off. I got out of bed and one punch cold cocked him.
Wow.
Completely changed our relationship forever. Seriously, that dominance inferiority role became more equated from that point in time.
Yeah.
It was really remarkable. But until that point, he was one miserable prick.
So for people that are in business and are dealing with that, no matter what the level, let's say, you know, how do you deal? What's the best way you found to deal with the imposter?
I think it's really important that you honestly look at your successes. You wouldn't be where you were if you didn't have some successes. Evaluate those successes and accept the role you played in those successes. It wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
You added to that success. Either you initiated that success, or you participated in that success, or you rolled out that success and made it more successful. You would not be where you were if you had not found success at some points along the way. Yeah. Honor yourself. Respect yourself. Look in the mirror and see that person looking back at you who's a good person.
Yeah.
Value that good person. Value your friends. Value your colleagues. It's really so simple. It's about having humanity.
Yeah.
And vulnerability. I'm a big crier.
Yeah.
All my people do.
No, listen, I can't get through a movie without it. I got the man tears on every movie.
My kids say that I cry when brand X loses in the comparison test in a commercial.
That's awesome. I find like people too, like I get a lot of emails from people, they say, I feel stuck or I feel unnoticed in my, that I can't get to the next level. And it's, again, I think the statement of personal value, how you value yourself.
There's really something interesting about that, because I found, and you kicked something off of me, I found two different variables. It was usually among young MBAs. Staples had more Harvard MBAs floating around than I've had at lunches. But there were two different scenarios. One group wanted to do the best they could possibly do, no matter whatever was at hand. The other group was only worried about their next step. How do I get to the next step? What's my path? Should I move into that discipline for the next path, or this discipline for the next path? I had no patience for the MBA who was only worried about the next step. The people who succeeded invariably were the ones who only worried about doing a kick-ass job, the best they were capable of doing in the job they had. Those are the people who got noticed. Those are the people who made progress by being the best they could be. That used to be the U.S. Army motto. I got to be careful here.
Yeah.
But being the best they could be guaranteed them a path forward. Yeah. People looked for them. They didn't have to look for the path. Whenever anybody was looking for somebody, we're looking for somebody to fill this role. Do you think Kerry could be the person? It was always that person who had fiercely worked to be successful in the tasks they had at hand. So I have some difficulty with that person who says, I'm not getting noticed.
Yeah.
Want to get noticed? Want to get noticed? Do your job really well. You'll get noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Whenever I talk to like baseball players about that, like a Mariano Rivera, it's like, you know what? I just decided that I'm going to work really hard and smart. I'm going to get really good at what I do, and I'll get paid as a result. And that's sort of the thing is like, you can't get paid before you get the result. And it's similar, do the work, with passion and juice and fire, and you'll be hard not to get it'll be hard for people.
But he's a great example because he never tried to be something he wasn't.
Yeah. One pitch, right?
He never, ever tried. He just was the best at what he did.
Yeah.
He didn't need more to consider himself really successful. He was just flawless at what he did.
So, and I think this kind of sets up, I did want to bring this up because I know you mentioned a lot, the content versus satisfied. That's one of your things.
Yep.
So like, can you give a quick explanation of it and sort of how you look at it?
I retired in 2012. I was very content with what I had accomplished career-wise, to a great extent family-wise, but that doesn't mean I was satisfied. If nothing had developed, I would be content. But to the extent there was a hunger to do more and do different and do other, that brought me greater satisfaction in addition to contentment. So even today, and this, I now serve on 5 boards. I'm an operating partner for a private equity group. I teach entrepreneurism at Palm Beach Gardens High School. All those things happened, and then, no false humility. They happened because of who and what I am, but they happened with no planning. And they have enriched my life immensely. But if they didn't happen, I would have been satisfied with who and what I was, but I've gotten so much more satisfaction, contentment. My life is so much fuller for all of these involvements, helping people, working with people, getting to know you. I got to tell that story before we
oh yeah, no, don't worry. We'll hit the fitness side in a minute, because I had one more thing that I did want to go over, because I think so many people today, there's a lot of people that are hungry to get better and they're hungry to excel, but they spend so much time developing the plan. And sort of when we kind of go back in your history, it doesn't seem like you planned a whole lot.
No, yeah, I think I said very early in this conversation that flexibility was paramount.
Yeah.
And I was flexible enough to adjust to the situation when and if I had to. And I think that that's really crucial. I don't think you can, Staples was totally different than working for the Dutch. Working for the Dutch was totally different than my partner and I living out of the cash register.
Did you aspire to be an entrepreneur? Like you were working for somebody in the beginning and then all of a sudden now you're in business. Like that's a somewhat of a big jump.
I always somehow thought I would end up in some kind of business. I certainly never thought I'd make my living selling pens, pencils, and paper clips.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that I don't think of myself that way. I think that we created the team created a value proposition that was way beyond pens, pencils, and paper clips.
Yeah.
And it was about freeing businesses to do their missions by having them worry less about something that was more of an annoyance than anything else.
Yeah.
A la,
yeah, because I find so many people today, it's like everything's got to be like planned out. I mean, they're thinking 5 years ahead, and it's like, guys, and that's unfortunately they're being sold a lot of this from all these like goal setting programs and and all that, and it drives me nuts because I'm like, there's some things in life that you have to leave to circumstance, and you really have to trust yourself.
And you have to be able to see them when they happen, and seize the moment when they happen.
Yeah.
If I didn't create open seeing hours on Thursday morning and that young guy come in to see me and say we should become partners, if Rothschild had not been my client and hadn't offered us to sell the Hillman Group, there are so many random situations. If we had not mounted a hostile takeover to take the Dutch over in 2008,
yeah.
There are so many random occurrences that you can't possibly plan for, but you have to be, got another prop.
I like this. I got to get some props on my desk, some go-tos. Be aware.
Something one of my bosses gave me years ago to put on my desk, and it's been with me. It's been there for years. And all it says is you got to be aware of what's going on around you. You got to have your eyes open and your ears open and always be aware of what's going on with your people. I can't imagine how many times I noticed one of the team sagging. And I'd always make the time to call them into my office and say, hey, what's wrong? Something's going on. I can sense it.
Yeah.
And that meant so much to every one of them. That absolutely blew their minds in every case. And it wasn't done for effect. Done because I care.
Yeah.
But it had such an effect on all of them. Interesting story that when 12 years ago I had my knee replaced, and I developed a massive allergy to all pain meds on day 2. So I had to do rehab for 6 weeks with cold turkey, nothing.
Oof.
And in rehab in those days, 12 years ago, was
not the same as today. Not the same as today.
6 hours a day in something called a continuous passive motion machine. That
CPM.
And two further out. I had tears in my. I didn't sleep and I didn't eat. A friend sent me, a business friend, a vendor, sent me a case of ice cream from Cincinnati called Graeter's, Graeters, and saved my life because I ate it and I got glee from it. I ate it.
Yeah.
But I started sending a case of Graeter's to anybody I knew, family, team members. If they got ill, if they got seriously ill, I would send a case of Graeter's to their house. Cool. Yeah. Now available at Whole Foods, by the way.
Yeah, I gotta grab it. I gotta try that. That's cool. Now I have it, and now I'll never forget it. But again, I look at your life again, going back as we're wrapping up here. Is like it's all been about change. It's all been about evolution, and alongside of that, it's been about awareness
and having fun.
And having fun, which Jay, by the way, has had some unbelievable cars and motorcycles. I think.
So this was my corporate profile shot at Staples as one of the top 15 people. It annoyed the hell out of them.
That's awesome.
That was perfect with me.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you can see the easy button on my arm.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Hey, listen, fun's a part of it. I meet a lot of young people today, even older guys, that all they do is work, and they forgot to have fun. They forgot about that part of the equation, and it's like they're just horrible to be around.
I had one of these on the center of the conference table in that office I was describing for the team meetings.
Yeah.
Staff meeting, and I had to make a decision on a Tuesday about who to invest, who to prioritize next in IS development. One side of my business or the other side, and I made the best decision I could. It was a Solomon the Wise decision. Split the baby, and you couldn't do that. I did what I thought was the right thing to do and moved on. Apologized to the other guy in advance. Told him I had to make a decision, and I did. I'm sorry. That's what the decision is I made. The next morning, it's Wednesday morning. It's time for the meeting. I would always hit that when the meeting started. I hit it, and it said, the guy who didn't get the nod rigged it to say, "You made the fucking stupidest decision of your career yesterday."
That's awesome. That's great.
That was the best.
So for where you are now, I mean, we'll get into our story, but what I admire is that, listen, you're not 40, you're not 30, but
I'm 73, guys.
73.
I'm 73 and proud of it.
And train 6 days a week now, taking care of your health, putting that as a major priority after sort of going through the grind for so many years. And there's people today that are still thinking they have to grind and sacrifice their health. And you're saying, hey, you know what? If I would have maybe done some of these things now, I probably would have felt a lot better as I was going through my journey.
Not even a maybe, for sure. I think I have, before we were in our current situation, I had to do a lot of quick trips on due diligence to Europe with young, smart people in private equity who I work with. And we'd fly all night, and I'd have a cup of coffee and a shower, and I'm ready to go to a meeting, and they wanted an hour nap before they went to the meeting.
Yeah.
And they were always like, how do you do that? And I think how you do that is you stay in shape. And the one thing I know for a fact, and too many people as they get older say, it's too late for me. I've read a lot, and you know this much better than I do. I've read a lot, including one study that was about, believe it or not, people from 85 to 100. And the study was about their ability to rebuild muscle mass, strength, and coordination at that point of their lives.
Yeah.
And it was remarkable how it was possible at any stage of your life, maybe to not get back the way I was when I was 18, but to get back to far above any of my contemporaries.
Yeah.
I did yesterday morning in my training session, I did 60 tap shoulder push-ups.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, but think about what I always say this. Think about what training your physicality does for your mental, for your confidence, for your just belief in yourself that you're doing things the right way.
Who would have believed? I certainly did. I knew I would do that because being a type A, give me a challenge and I'm going to make the challenge, period.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But who would have believed that 73 and 60 Marlboro Reds a day at one point and weighing 270 pounds at one point, that I could ever get back to a shape and a new knee? Who would ever believe I would get back into any kind of acceptable physical condition to be able to do stuff like that? It's just remarkable and makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Makes me so much a participant in my life.
Yep.
And in every aspect of my life, whether it's business, personal, fun, driving cars,
yeah.
doesn't matter in all of those. So before we run out of time, I'm sorry, folks, you have to hear the story of how I met Dana. the unedited, and you're not allowed to edit this out, Dana.
I won't, I promise. I'll keep it as is.
It's over between us. So about 3 years ago, I believe, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
I used to go to Flywheel in Boca many times a week, including Saturday mornings at 10:30. And one 10:30 Saturday morning, I came in a little bit late. He's blushing. I mean, I could see.
I just want to say, when I was walking, I was like, who's driving this McLaren? I can't wait to see who this guy is.
So I'm a little late in the class. I get on the bike, and he's already sitting there, and he kind of gives me the old man, you need help setting up your bike? Now, I was pretty damn good at Flywheel, folks. I was competent for my age class. So I said, no, I think I got it. And for those of you who don't know Flywheel, there used to be a board that would say where people were. And although you might not recognize their board name, it had their bike number. So you knew how they were doing. So the first class, we're together, and he's next to me, and I'm next to him. And I just bust my ass and do the best I can. And I beat him. And I get up at the end of class, and I don't wait for the stretch. He's still on his bike stretching because I want to piss him off. And I lean into him over the bike and say, how does it feel to get your ass whipped by a 70-year-old? Now I come outside, and I'm sitting there catching my breath. And he comes out, and he says, who and what are you? P.S. He was back the following Saturday and did not take me for granted and whip my ass. Fair's fair, but part of the success of my life is people taking me for granted.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you beat me that one day. It only takes that one time.
That's all it takes.
If we were playing for money that day, you would have hustled me. No, that's awesome.
But the others of you may not be aware that he and I do a mega reformer training sessions together, and I have found a new place where I have to tell him what to do when he's doing it wrong.
Well, listen, I was that person, honestly, that when you said, hey, we got to do Pilates, I was like, I don't know, this sounds like a women's class. I don't know if I want to do that, but I got to tell you, I hurt my back last summer, and when you started talking about Pilates, I said, you know what? I got to be more open to some new things, because what I'm doing right now, it's not working. It's not that I was out of shape, but I wasn't in the right shape. And that's, again, I think that's sort of the theme that we're seeing today is like, be open to change, be open to constantly evolving. And you don't know everything.
In our current environment, I've had to do something I never did before in my life. I have one-on-one training via Facebook. And this is my office, but right now it's got an exercise mat, barbells, cushions, bands, leg weights, and this instructor is killing me.
Yeah, but you made an adjustment. You said, hey, you know what? Think times right now are a little bit different, and I don't have the freedom to leave. I don't want to leave and put myself at risk. What can I do to keep my routine strong?
I work too hard to get where I am to sit back and say, well, you just can't do that now. Let it go. Yeah. I'll get it back another day. Not happening. No way.
Which, well, I think a lot of people do this though too. They think that eventually they're going to get to like this place where they can go, and it's like, if you're a high performer and you're cut that way, you need to get comfortable.
I get that rush after every session. That's the only time I get that rush.
That's satisfaction. Where you know you're left there.
And I think about something you wrote last week at every class I've been to since then. Am I Jekyll or Hyde this morning? Which one am I?
Yeah.
And you're so right. You can change yourself from Jekyll to Hyde, from here to here. You do not have to accept the inevitability of today's a bad day, I can't do anything. Today's a bad day, I'm not going to succeed. Baloney. Put that out of your head. You choose not to be Jekyll. You may not be a champion today, but you're not going to be a loser either.
Right. Which leads me to my final question, which I've been asking everybody at the end. The word champion, that's like my word. I love it. What does the word champion mean to Jay Baitler? There's no wrong answer.
It means all the people that I have admired along the way. I never think of it personally. It means all of the role models that have inspired me along the way. Teachers, coaches, great high school coach who really, Tony Piazza in Long Beach, Long Island, who just absolutely, I was not a good athlete, and he showed me that I could really be good if I wanted to be good. By the way, they used to broadcast in New York the high school game of the week.
Yeah.
And Marty Glickman, who you may remember as a sportscaster, broadcast the game of the week of Long Beach High School versus Lawrence High School in 1963, my junior year. And it was a game where they had a great pass defense, so we were running, and I was the center, and running backs, unfortunately, would fumble every time we got inside the 10-yard line. And I came over to the sideline and smashed my helmet on the ground. And the second time I did it, Tony Piazza, who was about 4'0", came up and grabbed the guard and said, "If you ever do that again, you will never play on one of my teams ever."
Wow.
I never did it again.
That's cool. That's cool. That's some good discipline and a good lesson. I call that champion leadership.
Yeah, he was an amazing leader. He was just an absolutely amazing leader. And one of the leaders I still admire to this day. Leaders, I was in the Army, leaders I had in the Army, Sergeant Major Norman Ebell taught me more about depending on myself and my buddies than anybody else to that point in life. Leaders in business, vendors, family members. I've been blessed by being able to learn from great champions at everything I've done.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, it sounds like too, you've surrounded yourself with those kind of people.
They're all there.
Yeah.
They're all there for everybody. You have to be willing to reach out to them.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are or where you are. You have to be willing to reach out to them. And if you're open to reaching out to them and to sharing, maybe you're their champion.
Well, that's what I find too. You know, people are so open. They're so open to sharing. Like they want to, like, even the way we connected, like,
look at you and me.
Oh yeah, our relationship is built on that connection of helping each other and talking, and you know, it was sort of crazy how we met, but we stayed in touch. And there's people out there today there's somebody for everybody. You just have to ask. And I talk to a lot of CEOs, and they can't believe how nobody asks them any questions. And it's like these people, some of them are really good. You can learn a lot.
CEOs have one of the things that I think CEOs, big company CEOs, have a real problem with is they really can't go to people and let their hair down.
Yeah.
They don't feel empowered to share their fears, their worries, their concerns, their trials, their tribulations, because they don't think they can do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a terrible burden that we put on CEOs. And I've always recommended, and in 2 of my companies, we've taken it up. We pay and hire a psychiatrist for our CEOs, so they have a safe space to go discuss anything that's on their mind and they know can't come back to us because of patient practitioner privacy.
Yeah.
So consequently, it gives them that outlet to let their hair down somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it's terrible to not be able to do that.
Yeah, everybody's so worried about, you know, again, how is this going to be perceived, or is my, you know, stature going to change if I share? I tell people, just be yourself, man. Just be yourself.
My experience is people will love you even more if they see you as human and vulnerable and approachable. Yep. People will just absolutely flock to you if they can see some of themselves in you.
Yep. So true. Awesome. Jay, thank you, man. As always, I love you, brother. It's awesome.
Hey, I love you, brother, but you have the job of having to edit this down to a digestible piece.
No, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep it. I'm going to keep it whole, and I'm going to segment it into like little, extracts.
I could give you a year of segments here. You could get 1 year of segments.
It's okay. Listen, I got plenty of time.
I think we went an hour and 35. I'm not sure.
Well, listen, I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed a little healthy conversation.
Ask me to talk, man, and forget about it.
I know. That's, listen, we don't get a chance to see each other because we're not able to get to our training center.
We'll get there.
Hopefully another week or two, we'll be able to get back in the mix.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, Jay. See you, man. Thanks again.